This is the Lulich Corner. I'm Jordan Lulich, and today I get to sit down with Jennifer Denorio, one of our own estate planning and probate attorneys, to talk about everything probate. So Jen, thanks for coming on. Thanks for
Yeah.
volunteering your time to share all your nuggets of knowledge and your wisdom about the probate area. But before we dive into probate, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to everybody watching and just share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Jennifer. I've been with Lulich for, I think, a little over 2 years now. I've been an attorney for 3 years. Strictly have only done probate and estate planning. Originally from New York, but have been in Florida for like 13 years now. So I moved here when I was a child. So this is pretty much my home. Yeah, I would not go back. So yeah, that's
Cool.
a little snippet of me.
Sounds good. And another FSU alumni. So go
Yes,
Knowles.
go Knowles.
Um,
We're biased here.
Yes, it's a prerequisite. Now we got some Gators on the
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
But no, appreciate you joining. I'm excited for today's conversation. And a lot of people like hear probate and I think they have an idea of what probate is, but do you find a lot of times when you start talking to people about probate that they really don't understand what probate is, or maybe there's some misconceptions that surround probate?
Yeah, for sure. Normally in my consultations, I'll ask clients and be like, "Do you know what probate is?" And they're like, yeah, we know it's bad." And I'm like,
Okay.
"Okay, that's okay. That's like a
Yeah.
good starting point." But for the most part, they don't really know what the process actually entails, what actually goes on with the courts and what's being filed and what's being done and what's the purpose of it.
Right.
So normally I have to have a conversation with them and kind of go through that process and why it's bad or, why it's positive and
Yeah.
how to avoid it. So it's normally a whole
'Cause it's
conversation.
not going to be bad in every scenario, but I
No.
think the biggest misconception I hear is if I have a will, I get to avoid probate.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
definitely one of the biggest ones. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that having a will, they're good, no probate, but
Yeah.
that's the opposite.
Yeah.
Your will is what gets filed with the probate court to tell the judge, who's in charge, who's your executor, and who your beneficiaries are.
So your will's instructions to actually do the probate.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
provides no protection from probate. It's simply instructions.
Yeah. So what is probate? Like in a nutshell, like how do you
Um,
explain probate
yeah,
surface level?
I would say basically it's just a legal process where, or to administrate an estate of someone who just passed away.
Yeah.
And that's like very service level.
So like getting someone's stuff to their loved ones or their
Yeah.
beneficiaries.
It's only required though when those estate assets are in the decedent's name alone.
Right.
So that's kind of another thing that a lot of people don't know. But if someone passes away and they have an asset in their individual name, it's required to go through probate before your executor or beneficiaries can get access to it.
Yeah. A lot of times, we'll see what husband and wife, they own a home together, right? So that home being in both of their names, we don't have to go through the
Right.
probate process. But every now and then you see a situation where maybe wife just owns their primary home and husband's not on the title or other way around.
Yeah.
And so what if you have that situation where, maybe your wife just owns your primary home or your husband owns your primary home, are we looking at a probate
Yeah.
if that's the situation?
Yeah. If there's only one person on that title and they die, whether they're married or not, you're looking at probate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important to double check those things.
Yeah. And now what happens if someone doesn't have a will? Like do they still go through probate?
Yep. So whether or not they have a will or not doesn't really matter. If they don't have a will, Florida provides a statute known as the intestate statute. And that kind of provides the direction on who your beneficiaries are. So, if you do have a surviving spouse, they're normally your beneficiary. If not, your kids, siblings, it's kind of like a family tree.
Yeah.
But either way, whether you have a will or not, if that asset's in that person's name alone, it's going through probate.
Right. You're going to go through probate.
Mm-hmm.
I think going back to misconceptions, something that I get a lot from people that, have younger families or young professionals. Oh, I don't need a will. That's just for rich people.
Mm-hmm.
That's just people with a lot of stuff. What situation would someone who is just getting started that has a young family, like where would an estate plan become so important for them? Even if they don't have anything,
Yeah.
even if they don't have any stuff, why would they care about having an estate plan?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, but I think really an estate plan should be for everyone, whether you have $1 million or whether you have $100,000. I mean, you still worked hard for that,
Yeah.
and you should ensure that it's going to whoever you want it to go to. Especially for young families, we're dealing with minors now.
Mm-hmm.
And when that property or asset is going through probate and then we have guardianship on top of that, I mean, that's a lot of legal fees that are going to be taken out of their inheritance.
Yeah.
So that's super important. And I think we've seen a lot more younger families realizing that. Like, I would say, me personally, I have so many lately that are going on vacation by themselves. Kids are staying here.
Yeah.
What happens if the plane goes down?
That's the biggest thing is like
Mhm.
now as a dad, it's if something happens to my wife and I, who's going to take care of our kids?
Exactly.
Because we
Yeah.
don't want the government, we don't
Being
want the
in charge of
government
that.
saying
Mhm.
who's going to step in for us. We want to make that decision.
Yeah,
And that can be a tough conversation for some people.
it is, because it's
Yeah.
not something that's in your normal conversation.
Yeah.
And thinking about, who's going to be taking care of your kids
Yeah.
that's a tough one.
Yeah. I think some people also say, "Oh, I don't need an estate plan. I'm not going to worry about it because I'll let them figure it out when I pass away." Right? They can figure out the stuff. They can just have it.
Mhm.
But is there more than just what from the probate process? Is there more, maybe the times where you don't see an estate plan or you see an old estate plan that's outdated, that's not really relevant anymore? Do you see the difference between a good plan and a bad plan or no plan at all
Yeah.
make that probate process easier for the family?
Yeah. I mean, I would say my biggest pet peeve, especially, is when I see estate plans and let's say they have 5 kids, but they only name one kid as the beneficiary because they think that child is going to be fair. They're going to distribute equally. Everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
It'll be so much easier. 9 times out of 10, no, it's never easier. It always starts fights among the kids because why did they choose that guy, and
Yep.
then he also has tax consequences now because he's gifting money away if he ends up doing that.
Yeah.
So that just creates a mess normally 9 times out of 10. And even without an estate plan, people do that on like their houses, right? They add child 1 to their deed. Do not do that.
Don't add a child to your deed?
No.
Why not?
That's the biggest no-no.
How come?
Because A, you're going to lose your homestead exemption. B, they're going to have capital gains tax because they are not inheriting the property. And 9 times out of 10, like I said, that child 1 ends up not being fair to the other kids, or if they do decide to be fair, now they have gift tax. So there's better tools to do that.
I think you just said something really valuable. A lot of times people want to add a child to their home. And so even if your child deserves it, or even if you want to gift it, and even if, everything that you're talking about from being fair to the others, if maybe that's not even relevant, or maybe you just have one child alone, the fact of adding someone onto your deed during your lifetime, you're creating a much larger tax liability for that
Yeah.
person versus if they inherit it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that tax liability could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Like we're talking,
I mean,
depending
these
upon the
people-
value of the property, we're
Right.
talking about a huge tax liability.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
People bought their house when it was worth $100,000 and now it's worth $500,000. So
So is there a way to go through this process and leave an inheritance for your loved ones and for your beneficiaries, but not go through the probate process?
I mean, there's several ways. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, the most common way is a trust, right? That's one of the main benefits of having a trust is whatever's in that trust at your death avoids probate. So that can be real estate, bank accounts, businesses. I mean, the trust is a really flexible document and can hold all assets. And
Is it
then
trust for everyone?
no, certainly not. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the trust is on the more expensive side for people. So there's other tools to, avoid probate other than a trust. Even just having simple beneficiary designations on your bank accounts. I mean, that's free.
Yep.
Go into the bank, add a payable on death, transfer on death, and that avoids probate. And then at least here in Florida, we have the infamous ladybird deed.
Yep.
So that's huge for people who can't necessarily afford a trust and they really only have real estate and a bank account.
What are your thoughts about a ladybird deed?
I like it. It's tricky because there's not a lot of case law on it. Banks don't like it. If you have a mortgage, and you'd go to refinance, they make you undo it. So it's definitely still a newer thing, but I like it because it's more feasible for people to afford. And instead of adding someone as a joint owner, this is a better tool to make sure your child's still inheriting it. There's no tax liability and they're avoiding probate.
So it could be an effective planning tool. What are the drawbacks of using a ladybird deed?
Biggest drawback is whoever you name on that deed becomes the new owner. So if you have, 6 kids and you want them all to split the property equally, you got to add 6 kids.
Yep.
And there's not one person that's in charge. They're 6 equal owners and they got to agree to buy or they got to agree to sell. Or if one wants to buy the others, they got to split the expenses. So you definitely want to make sure they get along because that can be tricky.
So it can be a little bit more complex.
Yep.
You can get a little less detailed with the ladybird.
Yeah.
Less of a plan versus
Definitely. Compared to like a trust or will, there's really only so much direction we can provide.
So, we work with a lot of families, and oftentimes, we're coaching them and we're guiding them through the process after they lose a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what's the first step? Like, what should someone do once they lose a loved one? Like, what's that next step? Because it's something that we don't really think about until it's here.
Mm-hmm.
So what would your advice be for someone who?
I think most importantly, try to grieve. I feel like a lot of people jump into, okay, I need to sell the house. I need to get his bank account. I need to contact whatever, it's like, everything will still be there. Take the time to grieve. I have so many clients where they jumped right into probate, took 2 years later, and they're like so relieved now that they can go and actually like grieve their loved one, So I would say doing that. And then really second step is contact the funeral home, get that ball rolling because that's the process to get a death certificate. And without a death certificate, you're stuck. You really can't do anything.
Yeah, the process can definitely be overwhelming, but you don't have to do everything overnight. It's a process. Things can work it out.
Yeah. I have a lot of clients who they call like the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
they just don't know though.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They just don't know what
to
do.
They don't know what to do. So contact an attorney. I guess that could be a first step, but really just try to grieve, take it slow.
When we start talking about probates, what are the different types of probates that exist in Florida?
So in Florida, we have 2 different types of probate. So we have a summary administration and a formal administration. A summary administration is like a shortened form of probate. Other states call it like a small estate affidavit. And essentially here in Florida, you're allowed to do that when the assets are less than $75,000 or that person has been deceased for more than 2 years. So that's really nice for, people who just kind of left a bank account out there. It takes around, 2 months for the whole process. There's no executor appointed. We're basically just requesting the court to transfer the asset to the beneficiaries. And then a formal administration is kind of like that full-blown probate that kind of everyone thinks of. We get an executor appointed. They collect the assets into an estate account. They pay the creditors, sell the real estate, publish notice to creditors, and then eventually, everything gets distributed. But that form, I would say on average, it probably takes about a year.
Wow.
So,
So if someone's wanting to avoid probate, what advice would you give them?
I would say go talk to an estate planning attorney. Really sit down, lay out your assets, lay out your family dynamic, and let them kind of steer you and create a plan to, make sure that your assets won't be going through probate and your beneficiaries will, get access to those immediately.
So I have to ask, we're becoming a very tech-centric society. And, there's a lot of ads, there's a lot of commercials, DIY, do it yourself, or some non-attorney services that offer to do a probate or try to, offer advice on how to avoid probate.
Yeah.
If someone's contemplating hiring a DIY service or a service where there's a non-attorney helping them, what would you advise them, or what would you say just to keep them out of trouble?
I would say 9 times out of 10, when we have people or clients that try that route first, 9 times out of 10, they come back to us trying to clean up, the mess.
Yeah.
Because it seems easy kind of outside looking in, but
Yeah.
there are so many like intricacies and checklists, and every county requires different documents. And
Yeah.
I mean, and you're dealing with assets here. You don't want to, play with those. You want to make sure that they're properly being handled and eventually distributed.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, they end up spending more money because we have to then,
They did it wrong.
backstep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important to, go see an attorney that actually does this. I mean, I'm a probate attorney. I don't try to do criminal for, other people. It's such a niche, and
Yeah.
you want to make sure you're doing it properly.
Yeah. And even, I think you just hit it on the head, is you want someone who's doing it day in and day out,
Mhm.
because, we've seen examples just for other attorneys that may dabble or maybe not do estate planning on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We've seen a power of attorney. It wasn't the right updated power of attorney. It didn't have specific power
Right.
listed out where they had to initial those powers. It was
Mhm.
a form back in 2010 or 2011
Yeah.
they were using, but they had never updated. So these documents change,
Right.
and these laws change, right? You can't appoint someone who's not a Florida resident or who's not a loved one as personal representative,
Mm-hmm.
or who's a felon.
Yeah.
So there's different requirements that I think that really make the difference, when you sit down with someone and have a relationship with that person. What I love best about estate planning is, you're not just coming in and just filling out details. Like, we're really getting to know people and understand the family dynamics,
Mhm.
understand their situation. And everything stays confidential.
Right.
We don't tell anybody anything. It stays, with the firm, with the attorney.
Right.
And so I love that process of really getting to know, and you're not going to have that same relationship
Yeah.
with a DIY or with an online
No.
service. You're
No.
not going to be, even if AI evolves further, there's still that missing emotional piece
Yeah.
using AI.
And I think that's what is so beneficial too, is once these clients do pass on, we're still here. We
Yeah.
know the kids, we know, what the next steps are for them, and it makes an overall really smooth process for them.
So we've had some situations, or I think it's probably pretty frequently for us, that we get a situation where there's a property under contract,
Mhm.
and they find out that the person who owned the home had passed away. And so daughter's trying to sell the home, son's trying to sell the home, and it gets to a title company, and the title company says, hey, you can't sell the home. You have to go through probate.
Yeah.
What happens? Because I know you handle a lot of these types of situations. What can someone expect who has a buyer, is ready to buy mom or dad's home, and they find out that they have to go through this process called a probate?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because normally, you're looking at a closing date that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks out, and then this smacks you in your face and you're like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
And,
That's probably not going to happen.
right.
The 2
Probate
full-
is not, it's not a quick process. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's homestead, normally we can get away with 30 to 60 days, but
Which is a lot faster, because I think there's a conception
Yeah.
out there that people think it's going to take a year
no,
or
yeah.
8 months. So to your point, what you just said, you don't actually have to close out the probate.
No.
We just have to get the probate started, and then the property can close.
Yeah, we just need, someone appointed as a personal representative, and we can close in the midst of the probate. Can the proceeds be distributed yet? No, probably not. We have, a creditor period and all that, but we can still at least close, which, like you said, I don't think a lot of people realize. I had one the other day, and the person was like, I'm going to have to back out. It's going to be a year before I can do this. And I was like, slow down. It's okay. We'll figure it out.
We got this.
Yeah. So,
Well, sounds good. Well, I appreciate everybody listening in. Jen, thanks for joining us.
yeah, thank you.
If you have a probate question, or if you want to reach out, you can reach us on our office line at 772-589-5500, or you can email Jen directly. Jen, what's your email address?
Jen, Jen, @lulich.com.
All right. Well, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time.